I'm joined by Ron Klain, who is a lawyer, former chief of staff to two vice presidents, Al Gore and Joe Biden. Ron's currently an advisor to the Biden campaign, but you are here today because he was the Ebola Czar under President Obama. He knows about pandemics. In fact, he has a podcast called Epidemic you guys have to listen to. Ron, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for doing it too, Jessica. Happy to do it.
So I really want to dig into this idea of a coordinated federal response. You ran preparedness and response on Ebola. What does that even mean, coordinated federal response?
Well, so look, I think in any one of these situations, the president tries to throw a lot of resources at it, what's called the whole of government response. On Ebola, we had 17 different federal agencies working on the response. And so that means someone has to be in charge of making sure they're all working together, that the priorities are set, that there's a list of tasks, that they're getting executed. And that's what a coordinated federal response is. You can't just let each agency kind of go off on its own and do its own thing and hope it all works out. You need a master plan, and then you need to make sure that every one of these agencies is executing against their part of the plan. And that's what should be the case in any kind of crisis, and particularly a crisis like this.
Earlier this week, Jared Kushner said that there's something called the Strategic National Stockpile, and that belongs to the federal government, and it's not for the states. What is the Strategic National Stockpile, and what is the truth of that?
So the Strategic National Stockpile is kind of what it sounds like, which is it's a big set of warehouses filled with medical stuff and other stuff for other kinds of crises that the government can deploy when it's needed. So foreseeing that someday we would have a crisis like this, the government went out over years and bought a bunch of ventilators, bought a bunch of masks, bought a bunch of gowns, and stored them up for a rainy day. People could think of this as like the National Rainy Day Fund, if you will, okay? And that's what we have. Now, when Jared Kushner stood up this week and said it's only for the federal government, that's the first time anyone had ever heard that. And in fact, at the very moment he was saying that, the website of the Strategic National Stockpile said just the opposite. Now, they went in that night and they changed the website to make it match Kushner's words. The fact of the matter is, this is exactly the kind of crisis that the stockpile was meant to address. This is exactly why we stockpile these things, right? And so, of course, the goods in the stockpile need to be distributed to the states. And of course, the Trump administration should have done more before now to put more things in the stockpile. To his credit, I know people think of me as a big critic of the Trump administration, and I am, but I've been quite complimentary, frankly, of Secretary Alex Azar, Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services, who 2 years ago said we need to put more stuff in the stockpile, and Trump's budget director rejected that and said it wasn't really necessary financially. Azar also said last year that the one thing that keeps him awake at night is the pandemic, and he was right to be awake about that. So we saw this coming. We knew it was going to happen. We have a stockpile to respond to it. We got to get the stockpile goods out there. But most of all, really, Jessica, at this stage in the game, what we really need to do is to make more things, right? Even if we distribute the stockpile, we don't have enough masks, we don't have enough gloves, we don't have enough protective gear. And so really the challenge right now is the president using his power under something called the Defense Production Act to order the manufacturing sectors to make more and then taking control of the supply chain to get the stuff where it needs to go.
Would you put a point on that? So the president has the power to actually say to a private company, we're going to pay you for this stuff, but you have to do this. You have to make this thing.
Not only does the president, yes, he has that power. Not only does he have that power, he has used it hundreds of times during his presidency for the Defense Department and for the Homeland Security Department. When he decided to ramp up on the southwestern border, he ordered companies to make armor for border agents. He ordered companies to make drones for the Defense Department. So when the president says, well, this is a power that exists in socialist countries or whatever, he's used it literally hundreds of times for the Defense Department and for Homeland Security. I don't understand why he won't use it, in this case, to protect our health and safety.
Would you put this all together? I mean, if you were in charge, how would you organize this? You ran a response to an epidemic, so how would you do it?
So first of all, I do think it's important that one person be in charge. One problem we've seen here is that in the past 4 weeks, 4 different people have been in charge. First, Secretary Azar, then Vice President Pence, then Ambassador Debbie Birx, and now apparently Jared Kushner is in charge. So, one thing about having someone in charge is that someone has to be in charge, and we can't keep changing that person every week. I think once that person's in charge and empowered, what they really need to do is it's going to sound very simple, but we need to figure out what the needs are and then go about attacking the needs. I mean, at one level, this isn't that, it's very hard, but not that complicated. It's hard to do because making millions of things and getting them to the right place, that's difficult. And I've always been very clear about the fact that what the Trump administration has to do here is really, really hard, harder than what we did under Ebola. Okay, it's a very hard task. But like all tasks, it's not going to get done unless you start. Okay, and so what you need is an inventory of how many ventilators we need, how many masks we need, how many gowns we need, how many gloves we need, and where they're needed most urgently. And then direct manufacturers under the power the president has to make those things and take control of the procurement process to get them to where they're needed. One other problem they have right now is the position of the Trump administration is every state should go get this stuff for themselves. And there's two problems with that. First of all, it's driving up prices, right? And so when states are competing for orders, they're bidding against each other. That's just crazy. And secondly, it means the stuff isn't going to go where it's needed the most. So if you're a contracting officer in Kansas and you know the guy at the factory, maybe you get the order filled when in fact those things should go to New York right now and Kansas later. That's what we did with Ebola. With Ebola, we took control of the supply chain and made sure the stuff got to where it was needed when it was needed. This is going to hit different parts of the country at different times. And so having a national set of priorities and a national system of organizing it, not only is it's better for all of us. It makes sure the stuff is where it's needed when it's needed. Right now, New York is the first priority. But a month from now, it's going to be someplace else, and it's going to be, and having the stuff where it needs to be, when it needs to be there is the key thing.
Some people have said to me, there's a lot of controversy about why won't the president order a national social distancing directive? And people have said to me, well, the president can't do that. Can the president do that?
The president can't lock people in their homes, okay? But he could issue clear guidance saying, hey, everyone should be in their homes. Everyone across the country should. I urge all states to do it. I urge all governors to do it. What we've seen with some of the disasters in Florida and Georgia is we've seen the governor say, hey, no one told me I was supposed to lock everyone in their homes. No one said that we should have one of these national...
Isn't that a little crazy? Like the governors should know? Or is that what a president's for, to give a unified message?
I think hopefully the governors should know, and a lot of them have, right? Obviously, Governor Cuomo, and not just Democratic governors, Governor DeWine in Ohio, Governor Hogan in my home state of Maryland here, Governor Baker in Massachusetts. Governors in both parties are acting without that guidance. But I also think, look, it's not wrong for them to say, hey, I expect guidance from Washington. I expect guidance from the Centers for Disease Control. I mean, that's what they're there for, right? They're the experts. They're supposed to tell me what to do. You've seen Governor Cuomo say time and again, look, I understand these experts in Washington and Atlanta are supposed to tell me what to do. I'm just not going to wait anymore. And that's what he had to do. But that's not ideal, right? And I think we have these fantastic experts. They ought to be given clear guidance. The president ought to empower them to give clear guidance. And right now that guidance ought to be that we ought to be under a national stay-at-home policy. That should be it. Now, Jessica, one thing I always want to say about this is those of us staying at home need to remember there are a lot of people who can't stay at home, who aren't staying at home. For us to stay at home, someone has to deliver our groceries and create electrical power. So you're not going to have this conversation. And, in cell phone towers and workers and frontline workers, industry clerks, the people working at drugstores, so on and so forth. So one reason why it's important for anyone because a lot of people can't. And the best thing we can do for the people who are helping the rest of us is to stay at home so we're spreading less of the disease. The problem with epidemics is it's a race against time. We will eventually have all the things we need to fight this epidemic. But every day that we don't, more people die. And so every day sooner that we had gotten this stuff in place, we would have saved a lot of lives. And it's really important to note, and it's kind of surprising to people, that the principal victims of this epidemic will be healthcare workers. In almost every epidemic, 10 to 20% of the fatalities are doctors and nurses. Because they're the people, of course, if you think about it, who are around sick people the most. And if we don't protect them well enough, if they don't really have the masks and gloves and gowns and face shields they need, and all they do all day long is deal with sick people, they get sick. That's what happens. And that's a tragedy because, of course, we love our doctors and nurses, and they deserve the protection they deserve, they need. But it's a tragedy for another reason, because just at the time when we need the most number of healthcare workers, we start to lose healthcare workers. Even the ones that don't perish get sick, they can't work. And so what happens is the capacity of our system starts to drop just as the need for our system starts to go up. And that's why I think it was so important to have Admiral Zimmer and his team in the White House back in January saying, hey, I can see down the road what's going to happen here is in 2 or 3 months, we're going to have hospitals filled with people. Let's get the masks made. Let's get the gowns made. Let's get all this stuff made.
It's been 10 weeks since the first COVID-19 case happened in the U.S. Obviously, the White House is behind the 8 ball in a coordinated response. Is it too late for them to do something different, to change course?
It's not too late. I mean, obviously, it's too late in the sense that the lives that will be lost, the people who will get sick because we didn't have the right things in place, that's already happened. But this is continuing to go on. And so let's get it right now to bend the curve faster and to save lives 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, right? And so if we had a clear chain of command and a clear path of coordination, if we invoked the Defense Production Act and ordered the manufacturers to make more gear and then took control of the supply chain and got that gear to where it needed to go, we would make things better. And of course, if we all also have to do our part. Look, I'm very critical of the president, the way he's handled it, and I think that's fair, okay? But I also think it's all on all of us to also do our part. That means staying at home if you can, avoiding contact, keep complying with the stay-at-home orders, washing your hands, all the things we're supposed to be doing to try to slow the spread of the disease. The government has to do its part. We have to do our part.
Ron Klain, thank you for this, for your work, and for your podcast. Everyone needs to check it out. It's called Epidemic. You can get it on iTunes or any place there's a podcast, right?
Yes, absolutely, Jessica. Thanks so much.